cancer has bbeen offered £90,000 compensation by the company's insurers. Barry Yates claims his illness was caused by chemicals he used while working for the company. But Rentokil denies liability and says the offer was made against its wishes. Roger Currell reports.
Barry Yates developed stomach cancer after spraying wood treatment chemicals in North Wales for 10 years. Experts advised that dioxin impurities in a chemical called pentachlorophenol could have caused the disease, and now Mr Yates is receiving an out-of-court payment.
I'm very pleased with the offer, but they're still using the chemicals, and we want these chemicals banned.
Rentokil deny their chemicals were responsible in either case, and say they'll continue to use them. They say they deplore the decision of their insurers to make the payments to avoid huge legal bills. But the solicitor who represents the two families says the payment to Mr Yates will open the door to many more claims.
It's the first case worldwide involving pesticides, cancer and dioxin. Campaigners, for example, environmental groups have been calling for the banning of pentachlorophenol for many years. The government's position in this has been very lax.
That's one of the problems the Veterinary Products Committee will have to face when it meets on Thursday. Some say a ban is unlikely because the only effective way of controlling scab is by using organophosphorus sheep dips. But a second problem is, where would such a decision leave those who claim they've been poisoned? A question I put to Alan Kerr, a legal expert in pesticide litigation.
The difficulty is for the victim is actually breaking into the circle as far as pesticides are concerned. The argument generally is that, for example, a worker who is suing an employer would say, well, I haven't been provided with the correct protective gear or had inadequate instructions. Whereas then the farmer would probably say, well, I have given all the instructions and I have provided the gear, but I was simply doing what the manufacturers told me to do. The manufacturer will then turn around and say, well, unfortunately this pesticide is licensed by the government. And the government will then say, but we only give the information, we only grant a license as far as this pesticide is concerned on the basis of the information we are given by the manufacturer.
For those who consider themselves victims, it seems so unfair.
Gary Coomber has launched a legal test case in this country. He's suing two sheep dip manufacturers, claiming they failed to warn him their products could cause his heart attacks.
We're looking for substantial damages because Mr Coomber has obviously suffered a heart disease and is at risk, quite frankly, of dying. Also, he's been unable to develop his farm business in the way that he would like to have done, because he's obviously got to take things fairly slowly.
Gary's legal team found much of the medical literature on organophosphates can't be found in this country, and most experts are members of government committees and so unavailable to testify in court, all except one.
Professor McKenna, who is an eminent professor in cardiology, has supported the case and says that he believes that these particular OP chemicals have caused Gary to have this heart condition.
There's no question, this evidence is another nail in the coffin, really. It's got to be, you cannot work with these dangerous substances safely, you just can't, they must be banned.
It's the first concrete piece of evidence that associates neuropsychological and neurological problems with OPs. So it's a card at long last to be held by the sheep farmers.
With an oxygen tank mask placed on my face, and I inhaled the nerve gases directly into my lungs. Now, I didn't start doing backward hoops or frothing at the mouth and this and the other. We got a tightening across the chest, some for seconds, some for minutes.
Following experimentation, a number of people are now alleging ill health.
The solicitors Lee Day say that if the case succeeds, at least 50 more veterans will be claiming substantial damages.
We know that the people involved in the testing of Fortum are exposed to a whole range of chemical agents. Mustard gas, arsenic-based compounds which irritate the lungs, possibly Lewis-Dykes, and certainly to nerve agents.
The Ministry of Defence said tests on volunteers were carried out under stringent medical supervision. It would be for the courts to decide whether the top secret records of those experiments should be released.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Clark.
And I'm Sarah Lockett. There's new evidence tonight that hundreds of former workers at factories and ports are at risk from a deadly lung disease.
A doctor in North Kent says the number of patients suffering from asbestosis is rising dramatically. He's linking that to work done across the region 30 years ago.
One of the greatest concerns is what happened at the Neuralite factory. Workers say they were shoveling asbestos right up until 1987. Lawyers plan to claim compensation from the company's insurers. It could run into millions.
Obviously we can go through the civil courts and obtain compensation for those people who've got industrial diseases as a relation to exposure to asbestos. But at the end of the day, this should never have happened. And frankly, it's a disgrace and we should be calling for a public inquiry.
The prediction is that within 6 years' time, around 40 people a year will be dying from the killer strand of asbestosis. By that time, the so-called ticking time bomb will finally have exploded. David Glenforth in Higham for Meridian Tonight.
Details of another health scare today, not one connected with food this time, but a matter of serious concern to Britain's millions of gardens. Scientists have found that the popular insecticide Roseclear may cause eye irritation if used undiluted. Helen Wright has more detail.
Removed from garden centre shelves, it began the nationwide recall after the government announced its ban. According to gardeners, could be at risk from the combination of 3 chemicals in Roseclear, which can cause serious eye and skin irritation when the product's undiluted. But its manufacturers, Zeneca, say they've seen few problems.
The product has been in safe use for 14 years. The risk, in the government's own words, is a remote risk associated with the theoretical possibility of splashes of the concentrate getting into gardeners' eyes.
But tests of Roseclear on laboratory animals did cause severe eye damage. That led the government to ban the product as a precaution.
Pesticides are quite clearly capable of causing human ill health in certain circumstances, particularly where the product is abused, and it's no surprise to me at all that pesticides can cause human health problems. At this time of year, the winter crops are well on their way, and in a few weeks they'll get their first spray of chemicals to help keep diseases and pests at bay. But now, one of the chemicals used on crops has been linked in some quarters with tragic eye defects in children. Today, Countryfile investigates. A chemical venom is sprayed on crops ranging from cereals to fruit. Though not as popular as it once was with farmers, it's still used extensively by gardeners.
Different conclusions being drawn from the same scientific evidence.
If at the end of the day they do establish some link, won't you look rather silly?
Well, I think that is entirely a matter of our scientific judgment. We are independent scientific members who are jealous of our professional reputation. I think you would discover that we would not have made this decision light-heartedly, so our expectation is that such a link will not be found. If it is found, then we were clearly wrong.
Do you remember how we thrived? Do you remember our lives?
The dispute went to court. A judge ruled the family should not be evicted, but they must allow the landlords in to use chemicals or face jail. Frankly, it's a human rights issue, and that pesticides should not be used against a person's wishes. Government regulatory guidance specifically say not to use hazardous chemicals when they're not absolutely necessary.